All right, we are live on YouTube and Instagram. Welcome back to the return of ownership. You have Will McCoy, CEO and founder of Karuti, and me, Asia Kirkendall, CFO. And we are here to engage in more conversations around ownership, business, and all things related. Will, how you feeling today?
Great. How are you, Aaron?
I'm doing good. Okay, so picking up where we left off from last time, I want to hear your thoughts about the mindset of ownership. When you talk about, for our people, our community, a community of folks who have historically been kept out of the conversation, redlined, prevented from owning certain assets. How do you feel our relationship with ownership is today? And what do we need to work on and improve to really be able to take advantage of these opportunities we have coming up?
Yeah, that's a complex situation. I mean, we've had a lot happen, over the last 300, 400 years, whatever you want to say. And then a lot happened over the last 100 years when it comes to ownership. And we're really now just getting the opportunity. And we're really now understanding that, us as a collective have the opportunity to be able to own things. A lot of times we've been working in silos, right? What I call us working in silos. Each one of us will become successful. We kind of do our own thing, we take care of our family, whatever it may be. But that still only affords you a certain amount of capital. And you also realize that if you're working with somebody, you're always at risk, right? Mm-hmm. And so ownership, I think now people are starting to realize. I saw something the other day that it said 70 families got together and bought 5,000 acres in Georgia.
Yes.
And I saw that and I was like, wow, that's ownership. That's 70 people getting together, 70 families getting together and now owning basically an area. They didn't want to build inside broken areas. They wanted to buy their own land and start doing their own thing, building the way they need to in a community. And I think that we're going to see more of that idea of like, if you don't own land, if you don't own a product, you're really at risk, in this system. So
let me take it here then, because now that you're talking about it like that, you're exactly right. That same story about the 70 families who bought that land came across my algorithm too. And so let's pivot a little bit when we talk about ownership and the mindset and making sure that people have access to this information. And we talk about the media, you know what I'm saying? Because like you and I saw that story, but I imagine that's because our algorithms are curated to those type of stories where you're talking about business, real estate, ownership. So how do we make sure we get our message, this message of ownership, the platform we have to help people get there? How do we make sure that message cuts through all the BS? You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously we're doing these lives now, to do our best to reach the people. But in general, how do you feel like is the best way to cut through all the BS of the media and the things that come through our awareness every day to make sure the right message are getting to the right people?
I think hitting people with the morsels, right? Like how do you, what's that expression? How do you eat an elephant one piece at a time, right? Getting into this level of ownership that we need to have by like 2030, right?
Yeah.
So that we can sustain ourselves as a group of people and as a global power. You eat it one piece at a time, right? So some of the things that people can do is just like put hashtags that say investment.
Yes.
And you will find
yes.
Now your algorithm has changed, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're finding everybody who's talking about investment. And there's a lot of people right now talking about investment. A lot of people have the same mindset. A lot of people have the same feeling right now that without ownership, it's going to be tough to survive in the system.
Yeah.
And so that's one way that I have adjusted my algorithm to push out the things that I want. Because I simply go after, when I'm looking at hashtags, after those things. But it has to be conscious, right? It has to be conscious about, you got to be conscious about saying like, this is what I want, right?
Yes.
There's a bunch of other things that pop up, right? You got to kind of be like, no, I'm not going to follow this person. So it's also a matter of saying no, right?
Yes.
Some of the most important things that people can do is learn the ability to say no. Very successful people, they say no a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Um, I say no a lot to a lot of the things that come across my feed.
Yeah.
That try to slip in, and I
Yeah.
say yes to everything that's talking about investment, and investment not just here but on a global level, right?
Yeah.
There's opportunities everywhere. So.
Yes. When you said conscious mind, it's crazy. We must have been tapped into the same stream of thought, because you mentioned the morsels and exposure, to these conversations. What I wrote down was the reticular activating system, which is basically the part in our brain that acts as a filter between what we're consciously processing and doing and paying attention to versus the subconscious data that our brain is taking in at every moment. And so, according to neuroscience, the way we update our subconscious programming or create new programming, in this case, we're talking about a wealth mentality of a mindset, exposure, just like you said, if you're not used to having conversations about money, wealth, and business, then you have to just start exposing yourself to the information. And it's that thing, like, as humans, we don't like to be bad at something. So whenever you start anything new, it's kind of uncomfortable to be in the unknown and not good at it. At least for me, I'm really competitive. So if I'm not good at something, I do not like that feeling.
Right.
And so it's just the idea of being okay with not being good at something or being new. And so having that amateur apprentice mindset and just starting with the basics, like definitions. Okay. Maybe the first podcast you listened to, they were using a bunch of terms you didn't understand. Okay. Just take the time and just start looking at the ABCs of investing. What is equity? What is ROI, return on investment? And so it's like, whether we're talking about business or just anything else in life, I feel like that's a great first principle to have when you're talking about trying to learn something new.
Yeah, even on my a lot of times I'm getting back to it, but every single Wednesday I would have a new definition around equity crowdfunding or investment crowdfunding, because two reasons: it helped me, right, to be able to explain something very, very succinctly, because you got to do it within a minute, right?
Yeah.
And then two, like, I wanted people to be able to hear it from somebody who looks and feels and sounds like them, not somebody who's some professional, right? Like, there's a bunch of professionals out there, and it's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes hearing it from somebody who looks and sounds like you, it resonates, right? Yeah. Everybody has their different ways of hearing things. So I started that, I started that because I saw somebody else doing something similar, but it was for another
audience.
Yeah, another type of audience, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, wow, that's good, man. Just to have a definition per week, right? That kind of breaks this thing very easily for people. It's individuals. Those are the ways that we can do that. On our upcoming site, there'll be places where you'll be able to look at definitions and say, okay, I want to learn about X, Y, and Z, and it's going to give you a short definition and then even a little video clip.
Nice.
The great thing about AI now at this point is that, like, you can create videos like seconds, right?
Yes.
Right.
Beautiful.
And so, like, you can just put the definition in there and it'll just create a video for you and say, look, like, here's something to push out. Now, you may have to do a little bit of editing here and there, but that's easy for something to do. Like, and people can just get to know these things. And then what happens is, I've noticed that once you get this in your head, it almost is like you go down this rabbit hole, which is a good rabbit hole, right? Mm-hmm. And you start learning about, well, man, okay, I learned about crowdfunding, but okay, what about term sheets? Mm-hmm. And what about, equity? And what does it mean to have collateral? And like,
cap table,
what all these things you'll start learning about. And that's the way. And then your algorithm will automatically pick it up, because that's the things that you're putting inside the phone, right?
Yeah. And I love that you said that the repetition of it, because even for me, like you said, I can know these definitions in my working knowledge and can move around in these spaces, but it really tests your understanding whenever you have to explain it to somebody else, for somebody who's not in the space, to gather what you're saying, without having that background. So on that note, I want to ask you this question, because this just came to me as I'm reading these notes here. So we talk about, in the financial education space, especially since 2020, we've had a rise of people who are, helping to expose, the different opportunities in business and wealth and personal finance. without mentioning specific platforms, I feel like there's been a major wave of financial education and financial literacy. So with that, naturally, as time would tell, for anybody who maybe were unprepared or who didn't have the right team involved, or just plainly didn't have the skills and tools needed to execute what they were saying what they're doing, whether it was a special purpose vehicle, whether it was a crowd fund, whether it's just the people they're bringing to their platform. So in a space where we're starting to see some bad actors pop out in the financial education space, how do we make sure we set ourselves apart from because I feel like in my experience, I've seen people kind of get jaded, with anybody who's talking about financial literacy, or they kind of have like that extra level of scrutiny when it comes to these type of conversations. Like, are they just trying to get my money? Like, I've seen that before. So how do we set ourselves apart in a space where people are having growing concerns with anybody?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? I'd love to hear from you. How do we set ourselves apart? What you think?
Okay, that's a great question, because I asked it, but I don't necessarily know what I think about it yet.
What do you think? What do you think is the real issue? Let me ask it a different way. Why do you think that people feel that way when it comes to financial literacy?
Yeah. Well, first of all, talking about our history back to generations, if we know what they did with the Freedmen's Bank, what I'm saying? Like, we've come through a lot of instances where we trusted somebody, something, an institution, whether it was in our community or outside, where we've trusted them and the rug got pulled. And so, naturally, when you have a group of people who have, lived in survival mode, who, had to stretch to make ends meet for one reason or another, we're more prone to get rich quick, or like solve this pain now solutions. And so because of that, and, our trusting nature, especially when somebody looks like us, I feel like we kind of, and with the lack of traditional financial literacy, when an opportunity comes up and the person is talking good, sounds good, we naturally trust rather than take the time to learn the skills and the information to do a proper due diligence. So we just trust, we go in with the best of hopes, and then come to find out, it doesn't work out. Not to say it was a malicious reason why it didn't work out. It just didn't work out. And so just naturally over time, it not working out over and over, and those stories being the one that are highlighted, like the stories that do work out aren't necessarily what's highlighted. And so I feel like people just probably don't see enough of the good results, now that I've talked myself through that answer. I just don't think they see enough of the good opportunities, and there's too many of the bad ones being showcased.
Well, something that you said is very important is education, right? And one of the things that we were learning as we were going through FINRA, right, is that you must educate people on the risks, right? Our counterparts understand the risks, right? And so when they go and invest, they don't, even if the person is talking good, they understand the risks, right? Yes. We have a responsibility as people in this area, not just to talk about the good things, but to understand that there is a high level of risk when it comes to investment. There is no, okay, I'm gonna put my $10 in there and I'm gonna get $100 back all the time. You're gonna put your $10 into a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Maybe one of those things will win, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to continue to do that in order to win. There's no other system out there right now. AI is probably gonna change that here in the future. Yeah. But until that happens, even the best VCs in the world, from the Andreessen Horowitz to the Harlem Capitals to any of these people, they still do the same thing. They plant their money in a bunch of different companies, right? They spread it out, and then they hope the best racehorse wins.
Yeah.
So financial education also comes with understanding that whenever you invest, there's reward, but there's probably an equal amount of risk. Now you can de-risk you can de-risk a bit your investment by certain things. And one of the things that we're trying to do is add some type of hard collateral, hard asset to investing, right, in companies. But still, even then, even in real estate, there's risk, right? Yeah. So I think, to your point, I understand that people feel like, oh, I've gone through these things and, I've just tried and I've tried 3 times
Yes.
and failed. Well, the best investors try hundreds of times. Like, look at VC companies. They will invest into $2 million into 100 different companies. And that's a small firm.
Yeah.
So a
Yeah.
small
Yeah.
firm will invest $200 or $200 million into 100 different companies, $2 million each. And 90% of those will probably fail. 70% of them will probably fail, right?
Yeah.
But that one that hits is going to be the one that hits, right?
Yes.
So understanding risk.
Bro, that is so good, because it brings me back to a couple things. The gentleman I mentioned that told me about historical risk and realizing, like, when you zoom out and you have the context of how things truly work, because you're exactly right. When we talk about financial education, there's one aspect of the technical literacy, the technical education. What are the definitions? How does this product work? The technical things. And then there's kind of like the soft skills of investing in business, and understanding risk is exactly that. And so I feel like another way we can speak to that as far as educating is kind of taking that zoom out picture again, but really considering the long-term results versus just short-term. Again, going back to our history and knowing that we didn't always have the luxury to plan far ahead in the future. When you talk about the YOLO culture in the early 2000s, I'm gonna buy this Gucci belt because I want it now. I'm not thinking about my future and what this same, $1,000 can do for me going forward. And so I feel like, and then, scientifically, we don't know our future selves. Like, I'm here today. I know what I need today and this weekend. The person 5 years from now, I don't know that person. Why would I prioritize my future needs over my immediate needs? And so there's many reasons why it's harder to prioritize long-term over short-term if you haven't trained that muscle. But understanding risk, understanding that your long-term needs are just as important as your short-term needs, and being able to kind of frame that, when we're making our day-to-day decisions, I think will help out.
Also diversity in investment, right? We talk about diversity in business. We talk about diversity in our ecosystem, right? All those things are great things. Having diversities in your investment. A lot of times now they're called alt investments, right? So alternative investment vehicles, right? So you having different vehicles that your money is going down is one of the best ways to de-risk the investment. But understanding that, like, there is a good level of risk when it comes to any type of investment. I mean, even investing in yourself, right? There's some risk.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's good to bet on yourself, right? Because you know yourself.
Yeah.
But there's even investing in your education or investing in a small business or whatever it may be. There's a certain risk. That same risk goes into equities as well.
Yeah. Okay, so since you're talking about investing in yourself, I feel like this is a great opportunity for a shameless plug about the quantum wealth theory, because we've been talking about investing, and I feel like we've implied investing dollars, currency, whether it's US currency or a different country. But when you talk about the currencies that we have to spend in order to get this lifestyle that we're, designing for ourselves, we have more options than just the fiat currency. We have time, we have attention, we have energy, we have focus. And so going back to the algorithm and the things that we're consuming, consuming in our minds, consuming with our eyes and ears, that's an investment too. Like, every unit of currency that you spend, dollars, time, attention, focus, is an investment in what you want to grow.
Yep.
And so when you talk about investing, being smart, de-risking, diversifying, realize that there's more ways that you can invest in your future that don't start with a dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. Education. Yeah.
Okay. So, I feel like we can, keep today pretty short and sweet. For our next sessions, we can probably maybe have some more specific topics that we dive in on. But are there any final words that you have that you want to share for today?
No necessarily final words. There's a lot going on in the United States right now. We saw what happened yesterday. And it's a wake-up call to, I think, not just violence, but also tensions that people feel, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And because of those tensions, it can sometimes feel like hopeless, whether,
Mm,
just looking at the situation can sometimes feel hopeless. But having leverage, having mobility, the most wealthy people are always the most mobile, right? They
mm,
can move around, they
yeah,
have options, right?
yeah,
If things are changing or they're in a situation where they're going towards a situation that you don't like, then the ability to be mobile and move around, not just in the United States, but globally,
yeah.
is super important, right? And so as we think about, I always use the analogy of the Monopoly man. You ever notice that the Monopoly man is walking across the world or whatever it may
Mm,
be, right? And
hmm.
he's walking across the
Just
board,
strolling across.
right? But what that denotes is his mobility, right? Like
Yeah,
that denotes that he can move around, right? When he can move from Park Place, he can move from Sunset, he can move from these different areas. He has these different investments going on, right?
yeah,
Like in order to win Monopoly, you have to take the board,
yeah,
right? You're not just centered on Park Place. You're
yeah.
centered everywhere, right? Like you got things everywhere going on, and that's how you create the most money. It's the same thing with us, right?
Mm,
We
mm,
have to have investments that are diverse, right? So yeah, real estate is a great tool. You're making some money when it comes to your tenants. Awesome, that works, right?
yeah,
But also you maybe want to think about technology, like investing in technology companies or something with emerging markets, right? You see something coming up, right?
yeah,
Investing in obviously anything that's AI driven right this minute is probably a win, right?
yeah.
Investing in humanoid robots. I may not necessarily like humanoid robots. You may not necessarily, but you know what? They're not going to
Somebody
stop.
likes them. Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not stopping. You might as well invest in companies who are making them, right? Because they're going to be tools that people use, right?
yeah,
You may not necessarily like EVs, right? But around the world, EV adoption is happening, even if it's not strong in the United States right this minute.
yeah.
The rest of the world is taking on EVs like it's nobody's business, buying ice trucks, everything from ice trucks to
Mm,
motorcycles to everything else, right?
hmm,
And so EVs may be the thing. So having diversity in our investment gives us mobility.
yeah,
And then thinking on a global level.
yeah,
We are not set in stone in the United States. In fact, if you look at anybody who's wealthy, even in the United States, they have investments globally. They
yeah,
don't just have investments in the United States. NVIDIA doesn't just build chips for the US, they build chips for a host of countries,
yeah,
right? Tesla
yeah,
didn't just build cars for the US, it started in the US, but he builds it for a host. Google's not just in the US, right?
yeah,
Even Trump Towers, that wasn't just in the US at one point in
yeah,
time, it was a global situation, right?
yeah, yeah,
The most successful people figure out a way to have diversity,
yeah,
right? In their investments. They're across the board. So we should be thinking as a group of people, how do we do this globally?
yeah,
What are emerging markets that I can start investing in? Then my money could actually go further. $100 in Latin America could go a long ways compared to $100 in the United States.
yeah. It
$100
really
in
can.
Liberia could go a long ways
Yeah,
compared to $100 in the United States, right? How do we pull that money together
yeah,
and create, diversity in investment? So yeah, I that would be my note. Like, don't ever feel like this is it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
you see things happening and tensions rising, think about your mobility. Think about the Monopoly man and how he just strolls the earth, right? Like that's what you
yes.
want to be able to do.
Man, that's so good. And talking about the two key points: globally, thinking globally, mobility, to be able to move, to not think that you only have one option. And then, like you said earlier about eating the elephant at one time, one of the biggest aha moments for me, people talk about their financial goals, building wealth. They talk about financial freedom.
Mhm.
But for me, when somebody broke this down, it made so much sense because financial freedom is like the final step.
Mhm.
Before you get financial freedom, you can have time freedom or
Mhm.
you can have location freedom, like you
Mhm.
said. And even though you may not be financially free where you don't have to work to, maintain your basic needs, maybe you have a remote job or a remote business to where you
Mhm.
can be location freedom. And
Mhm.
eating that elephant one bite at a time, you don't have to jump all the way to time freedom, but kind of like recognize your steps along the way, celebrate those, and be hopeful and excited about it, not feeling like you're out of options.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Will. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Ocean.
Yeah, I love talking to you in this way because I feel like it gives us a different platform, uninterrupted,
Yeah,
just kind of open forum to like really dive into this stuff.
absolutely. I love it.
Okay, cool. Well, see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
All right, bye.